Hey there nation, welcome to the show. We help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and now it's time for another edition of Warhammer the Golden Age Battle Report number 32. This is a 3,000 point fight that was between my friend Death of the Tides of Change, which is Legion of Chaos, versus yours truly of Warhammer of the Goblins. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I decided to experiment a little bit differently this time with the battle report. I decided to go with a 3,000 point army of Goblins to see how I stack up against opponents for a couple of these battle reports. So I was looking forward to a challenge, and nothing says challenging like taking nothing but Goblins in a fight. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music, go through the list real quick. If you want to take a look at what we're taking exactly, feel free to pause the credits. You can take a look exactly what I'm bringing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this on.
Assemble the army!
Okay, people, that takes directly to deployment phase. As you can see, we're fighting on a 4x6 table. I'm deployed on the near side table. My opponent, Death, is deployed on the far side table. As you can see, I kind of went with a kind of like a refused flank kind of deployment. I used the edge of the table to protect my right hand flank. This Goblin army that I'm running is kind of like an interesting kind of take on the army. What I'm doing is kind of like a operational offensive, tactical, defensive type of build for this. So the idea is that my Goblin army does advance, but what I do is I kind of put my guys in certain areas around the terrain, so that way they get some good coverage and then kind of defend a spot and then have my enemies come at me. It's kind of like a different way of doing orcs and goblins, especially since I'm doing an all goblin list. So you can see on the very far left hand flank, I got my howlers deployed off onto the left hand side to kind of harass the chaos cavalry there on the left hand side. I also have my giant undead friend in the loon protecting the right hand flank of my army as well. The main portion of my army is located on the right hand side. As you can see, I have all three of my, I have the looters and backstabbers as well as those sneaky gits located there in the center as well. Those units are equipped with fanatics. On the very far right hand side, I got them bone breakers, which are my my unit of squig herders, and as well as 18 squigs. Right behind them, of course, I have my kamikaze boys. Those are my two goblin doom divers. And then right behind my main battle line, I have Grom the Paunch. That way he can lend both his ability as a battle standard bearer as well as a general for inspiring presence. And then right next to him on the right hand side, I have the Hateful Eight, which is my Ragnarok spider with the spider web the catch whip shrine, so that I can get +2 on my channeling abilities, as well as get lore master on the lore of the little wall. And pretty much the idea is I'm gonna have my enemy come towards me, so that way he has to swoop around to the left and try to come at me on my left hand side, so that way I can occupy defensive positions between that standing stone of rocks, that forest, as well as that hill. And that's pretty much what I'm kind of going for my deployment zone. And as you can see from my opponent, he's just lined up straight across from me because he's warrior chaos, and that's what they do best. So with the deployment phase over, let's go and talk about where everything's located in the individual deployment areas. Here's a close-up of my left-hand flank where you can see my howlers, kind of like a good little vanguard them out 12 inches, that way they can start plinking off some shots at those Chaos Knights and kind of harass them at the same time, kind of stop them from charging to my left-hand flank and kind of march block them at the same time. Also off of the table, I didn't really see them, is my Death Creepers with Snag like Robsmith. Those guys are kind of off the table because those guys are coming as ambushers, and so they have to lose a turn until turn 2 before they can start deploying onto the tabletop. And over here, tucked on the right-hand side, is where majority of my army is located. I got Undead Friend the Loon, the Giant, protecting my left-hand flank. Same thing with that Pillar of Rocks. I have those Backstabbers. Those are the guys who are in the yellow caps there. That's my unit of 20 Night Goblins with 3 Fanatics, full commands, and Netters. Right in the center, that huge horde formation of 40 Goblins. That is my Ludas. Those guys are all armed with short bows as well. In that unit, I also have my Night Goblin War Boss with the Mangler with his Cave Squig. I also have the Shrinking Shroomhead located in that unit as well. That's my level 2 caster who's equipped with the Lore of Undeath on this one. And on the far right hand side, of course, I got those Sneaky Gits. Those are the guys who are equipped to the Red Hats, and those guys are my archers as well as Fanatics in that army as well. And then right behind them, of course, you got Grom the Paunch and Niblet on the left hand side. They're there because they're really good combat lord, but the problem is that he's on a chariot, so he does kind of stick out, so I kind of put him behind the lines so that way he doesn't get shot off on turn 1. And then right next to him I have the Hateful Eight, which is my Arachnorock Spider with the Catchweb Spider Spine. And stationed on the very far right hand side along the table edge, I have my them Kamikaze Boys. Those are my 2 Doomdiver catapults located on the top of that watchtower there, so that way they got a good field of vision and a good field to fire across the entire board. It's kind of like a commanding piece of terrain. And then right in front of them I have the Bone Breakers. Those guys are my Cave Squig herd, but the herders are 6 herders and 18 Cave Squigs, and they're a nice little defensive unit to put on the right hand flank. Plus, if these guys break, they go wild and they just eat everything alive. So that pretty much makes it a deployment for this one. Now, as for the Tides of Change, this is Odeth's left-hand flank. He's got his Second Sons. That's a unit of 10 Chaos Knights, Marcus Tzeentch. They got ensorcel weapons. They're also back in the Blasted Standard as well, so that'd be kind of a nice little defense for them from being shot at from across the table. So that makes it the left-hand flank. And located on the top of the hill in the center, that's Galrausch. That's the Chaos Dragon. That's also a wizard as well, level 4 caster for Lore of Tzeentch as well. So he's located on the top of the hill there. So that's where my buddy brought a double dragon list. He's got 2 Chaos Dragons located in this army, so that's pretty frightening. Galrausch, though, is kind of a lesser threat, though, because he is subject to his leadership test, and he fails him. He can't really do much of anything because he's too busy attacking himself, so that's the nice part. However, he is also a level 4 caster. That's also a dragon, so you also got to take care of that as well. So this is a very, very kind of intimidating unit to take on. But luckily for me, though, he is packing the Lore of Tzeentch, so, you know, not as good sometimes, but it still could be devastating if done properly, so we'll see what happens with this guy. And located on his far right-hand flank, squaring off against the main lines of my army, he has his Stormlords, which is that huge unit of 30 Chaos Warriors armed with Halberdiers. He's also got his general, who's not his general. He also has his Battle Set Bearer located in there as well. He's got the Banner of Speed. To the right of them, he's got a Zangor, which are his unit of 26, I believe, or 26, yeah, no, 24. I'm sorry, 24 Gores are equipped with the Mark of Tzeentch as well. These guys have additional hand weapons. On the right hand side, you got the Shadow of Innistrad, which is his Mutolith Vortex Beast, and right behind them, you have Egret Van Horseman, who is his Chaos Lord mounted on a dragon. And that guy's packing the Hortense build. He has the 3-up Ward. He's got the Towers of Preservation, the Ogre Sword. He's also got like the third eye of Tzeentch, so he can reroll ward saves at 1, so very, very hard guy to kill. So yeah, be kind of an interesting battle to see how this one goes. So with deployment over, we go directly to the top at turn number 1. So this is the top of turn number 1 for the Goblins. I managed to win the initiative for this battle force, so I'll be going first. Very first thing I started doing is that, like I said before, I started advancing my miniatures and my army over to the key piece of terrain in order to defend those areas. First of all, I move up my Howlers as quickly as I possibly could. To the left-hand side there to kind of engage and kind of harass the Second Sons. At the same time, I also move Undead Fred as well as those Backstabbers. I have them located on the left-hand side. So that on the other side of that forest, as well as that Standing Stone, to kind of protect my left-hand flank. And right behind them, I have Grom the Paunch, of course, as well as the Ludus taking place in the center. I have my Backstabbers located, oh sorry, not Backstabbers, those Sneaky Gits, located on the right-hand flank there to kind of protect my right-hand side. I also march up my Cave Squigs because they can't shoot, so I might as well move as quickly as possible. And I also move my Arachnorock Spider to kind of protect my right-hand flank as well. During the magic phase, I had a pretty successful round of casting. First of all, I took the Shrinking Shroomhead and used his Lore of Undeath spells and cast Raise the Dead. I basically cast Rise, the Grave Call. Did that on the 14-up one that allows me to summon up 100 points of infantry from the undead. You have to excuse me, guys, I'm kind of fighting a cold on this one. So anyways, so I summoned up, as you can see, I got a whole unit of 14 ghouls I managed to apply on the table as well. And the reason why is because not only did I cause Rise, which gave me an extra 10 points to use in the next summoning, I also use Morkan, which is the Breath of Death, of Darkness rather, that also allowed me putting up D3 plus 1 wounds with the guys. I also got another undead token that I cast on that to give me the full 14 guys that you see there in the middle of the table. And those guys are kind of acting as a speed bump in the way of the Gores, so that way they can just slow them down, so that way I can take more time shooting at my opponent. And to top it all off, I also cast Gift of the Spider God as well into the unit of ghouls because these guys have poison attacks. they now cause poison attacks on rolls of 5 or 6 during the combat phase, which is pretty awesome as well. So that pretty much rounds up the magic phase. Shooting phase, however, was pretty uneventful. All I managed to do was cause 1 wound onto Galroush, and that's because I opened up with both of my Doomdiver catapults. Unfortunately for me, though, that guy's got a ward save of 5, so because a lot of my shots were just kind of like not really doing much against him in the first place. So, I don't know, I'll take 1 wound if I can get it. So that being said, there's no close combat phase. We go directly to bottom turn number 1 for the Warriors of Chaos. Okay, so this is the bottom turn number 1 for the Warriors of Chaos. This photo is taken directly after the movement phase, and as you can see, my opponent does kind of some fancy maneuvering in order to try to kind of outflank me because he does have flyers in this army. So first of all, he does try to charge originally with his second sons into my howlers. I did flee as results for that, so you can see that my howlers on the left-hand side are kind of located right there in the middle of the table. So because of that, he redirected his charge, and he's headed straight towards Undead Friend the Loon. Well, the problem with that is when he charged into Undead Friend the Loon, which is my giant, he got within 8 inches of the Backstabbers, which are my unit of 20 Night Goblins and Fanatics. So because of that popped my Fanatics, and all 3 of my Fanatics went through that unit and managed to kill 2 of those Chaos Knights in the process of doing that. So because of that, once that occurred, my opponent was a little bit more cautious with his charges. So instead of charging the rest of his army, he just kind of pretty much moves them up kind of gingerly. He does try to charge the Zangor into my newly summoned unit of ghouls, but he manages to fail his roll, so he goes up like, I think, 4 inches. But for the rest of his army, though, he starts maneuvering them kind of carefully, so that way they can get within range of my units at the same time, kind of attack him. On the left-hand side, he's got Galroush as well as Grand Van Horseman. He flies them all the way to the left-hand side where that Autumn Woods is located at, so that way he can swoop around my left-hand flank, which is kind of terrifying. At the same time, he also moves up his second sons kind of cautiously, because now that the Fanatics got popped from my sneaky gets, my Backstabbers, he'll be able to charge in with his second sons into his Stormlords into my unit as well. So he's got that kind of going for him. At the same time, he also moves up his Mutilated Vortex Beast on the right hand side, the Shadow over Innistrad. He moves him up a couple inches, so that way he's within range to use his Aura of Mutation ability spells onto my unit of Cave Squigs, and that pretty much makes the move phase for this one. Here's a close-up of my Fanatics from the Backstabbers going through that unit of Second Sons. Like I said, I only managed to kill 2 Chaos Knights in the process of doing that. He was just making his armor saves like he couldn't fail him, so that was kind of nice for him. But at the same time, though, my Fanatics do kind of cut off the left-hand side of my army from him advancing, because who knows where those Fanatics are going as well. Plus, he also charges Second Sons into my Giant. I'm kind of interested to see how my Giant stacks up against a unit of Chaos Knights, especially such a large unit like that. So that's the close-up on this left-hand side. And here's a close-up of his Gores filling their charge into my Ghouls, which is kind of good for me because it allows me to buy extra time to make that unit stronger and make it more of a speed bump at all costs. So that pretty much makes it the move phase for the Chaos Warriors. With that being said, we go directly to the Magic phase. And during the Magic phase, Galroush actually miscast a spell. My buddy O'Death was trying to cast Firestorm of Tzeentch's Firestorm into my main line of my guys. Unfortunately for him, when he scattered, he did roll from the miscast in that part, so that was kind of sad for him. But to make matters worse, when he rolled for the scatter, he was way off base. Was unable to hit my guys at all either, so that part was kind of devastating as well. For his miscast, he did roll magical feedback, so because they did take a strength 6 hit, which also wounded him as well. At the same time, but also took away all the rest of his power dice, so pretty uneventful Magic phase for my opponent. Because my opponent is a Chaos Army, there's no shooting, we go directly to the combat phase. And unfortunately for my buddy O'Death, Undead Friend the Loon just absolutely just destroyed that unit of Chaos Knights. The Chaos Knights managed to inflict 2 wounds onto him because they got to go first because of their initiative, but I rolled jump up and down for my Giant for his special attack. He ended up jumping up and down that unit 4 different times. Manages to kill that unit outright as well, so that part was pretty amazing as well. So one less unit of Chaos Knights to worry about. Man, I'm starting to like the way these Giants fight, because I never really use Giants all that often, but I'm starting to like them now. These are pretty epic. Alright, so that takes the top of turn number 2 for the Goblins. This picture is taken after the movement phase, and as you can see, I basically did some movement on this part. For the most part, most of my guys in the center portion of my army did relatively little moving at all. They just kind of maybe reposition themselves at best. However, on the flank, I took my Howlers, I marched them all the way to the left-hand side so that way they could harass the left-hand flank of Galroush and cause some problems as well. At the same time, the center, I did charge in my Ghouls into that unit of Gores, and the reason why is because I wanted to see what they could do. These guys are toughness 4. They got 2 attacks apiece. They got poison attacks, and I just wanted to see what these guys could unleash if I had to do that. If I had to do it. At the same time, Snaggle, Growl Spit, as well as the Death Creepers appear on the back side of the table there. I deploy them on the very far side so that way they can get into the back rank of either the Gores or as those Chaos Warriors of the Stormlords, so that way I can get them in kind of a pincer attack and destroy them that way as well with a lot of poison attacks. And that pretty much makes the move phase on this one. Here's a close-up of my Howlers getting ready to threaten the left-hand flank of Galrausch and then start shooting at him and causing some problems for my opponent Odeth. And here's a close-up of Snaggle Grosspit as well as the Death Creepers coming up in the back here on the back end of the table. I also got to mention too, one of my Fanatics actually went to that unit of Stormlords as well, managed to kill 3 of those guys in the process of doing that, so that was kind of nice on the left-hand side. And also in the center there, as you can see, my ghouls charge directly into the Zangor and get ready to fight those guys as well. During the magic phase, I had a pretty successful magic phase as well, not as successful as the previous one that I had, but it's still pretty good. As you can see, first thing I do, I just sum up another unit of ghouls as well. I managed to put 9 of them, this time as kind of like a speed pump between those Stormlords, as well as my Backstabbers. At the same time, I also cast off Itchy Nuisance onto the Stormlords as well, managed to take off 2 from their initiative, as well as their movement as well, which makes it a little bit easier for me to kind of take these guys on, especially in close combat, so that definitely helps out for the magic phase. So with magic phase over, we go directly to shooting phase. And in the shooting phase, I take all my Night Goblins with their short bows, which is basically 80 shots in all, and have them open up onto that unit of Stormlords. Now, this will kind of show you how deadly Chaos Warriors are, especially if they're Mark Tzeentch. I do manage to kill, I think, about 7 of them, I think I managed to do, out of the 80 shots they end up having. So it kind of shows you how weak sauce Goblins are when it comes to shooting as well. But, you know, I'll take whatever I can get. I pretty much took off almost a quarter, sorry, not a quarter, 20% of this unit down, so I'll take it. Pretty successful. And at the same time, managed to put another wound onto Galrausch as well. But like I said before, my buddy Odeth is rolling his ward saves out of the box, which makes you really, really afraid what happens when that Lord, that Chaos Lord and a Dragon finally comes to grips. I know I should be shooting at that Chaos Lord too, but at the same time, I'm trying to kill Galrausch right off the bat, so that way my opponent doesn't have a magic phase, and that's pretty much why I'm targeting him as well. So that pretty much makes it the shooting phase. So with shooting phase over, we go directly to the combat phase. And as you can see in this photo, I seriously underestimated the abilities of Beastmen in 8th edition of Warhammer Fantasy. I never really went up against Beastmen too much as when I was a player back when I was still around as a game. So because I didn't really know what to expect, my ghouls managed to kill 5 of the Gore at the same time, but the Gore managed to atomize my unit of ghouls at the same time. I think by the time combat got over with, I had 3 left, but the other 3 guys kind of vaporized into dust because of combat resolution that the Gore had with their additional ranks as well. So because of that, I'm undead, whatever difference of the combat scores, that's how many models I lose. So very, very devastating round of combat. I did not realize how dangerous Beastmen were, especially in a big unit like this. So with combat phase over, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Warriors of Chaos. So the bottom of turn number 2 for the Legion of Chaos. As you can see, this photo is taken directly after the move phase. As you can see in this photo, Odeth starts to charging all of his troops in and start engaging me in close combat. Starting on the left-hand side, he charges in both Galrausch as well as Igor Van Horseman into Undead Friend the Loon, so that's pretty frightening. At the same time, he also charges in his Stormlords into my newly summoned unit of ghouls that I put up in the last round as well to kind of go through those guys. I'm pretty sure that those guys are nothing more than the speed bump for these Chaos Warriors. They'll charge directly into my Backstabbers as soon as they get the chance. At the same time, he also kind of gingerly marches up his Gores through the forest as well as that hill on the right-hand side and kind of moves forward because he doesn't want to pop my Fanatics. And on the right-hand side, he charges in the Megalith Vortex Beast, the Shadow of Innistrad, into my Cave Squigs. So pretty eventful movement phase for my buddy Odeth. Alright, and since there is no magic phase for my opponent because he kind of, you know, had a pretty uneventful magic phase and there is no shooting, we go directly to the combat phase. I can see in this photo I got really, really lucky. I got put up 5 wounds onto Undead Friend the Loon. Those 3 of those wounds came from the Chaos Lord riding on top of the dragon as well. Same thing with Galrausch. Galrausch kind of flubbed his rolls in that part just because that Odeth didn't really cause that much damage with his dragon. However, the only thing that saved me is that I had 1 wound left over, so when I used my attack in the big things chart for my attack tables, I did the headbutt, I believe is what it's called, and that's basically where I just kind of pick a model, they take an armor with no a wound with no armor saves. The target is kind of like out for close combat. I use that against Igor Van Horseman's Chaos Dragon, so that way that thing doesn't get any attacks up onto Undead Fred. So luckily for me, I get to hold him on for another round, so that part was kind of nice. Combat between the Stormlords as well as my newly summoned ghouls actually went pretty well. I managed to knock off another rank of those guys in the process of doing that because they had such a lower initiative score, so it allowed me to kind of strike with them at the same time, so that was kind of nice. Poison tax was really, really helpful in that one especially. However, in the end though, the Stormlords did manage to destroy my unit, also managed to overrun as well and charge directly into the Backstabbers, so that part's kind of sad, but you know, that's the way things go. And then combat between the Shadow of Innistrad as well as my Bone Breakers actually ended up in a push. I managed to put 3 wounds onto the Mutolith Vortex Beast. The Mutolith Vortex Beast managed to put 4 wounds back onto my Squig Herd. Most of his attacks didn't really land too much. It was mainly his stomp attacks that did most of the damage. But then again, my opponent Odeth was also rolling out the box for his ward save, so because of that, only managed to get 3 wounds onto that guy. So these guys are now stuck in a stalemate, but at the same time though, that also means that my opponent's Mutolith Vortex Beast isn't causing any more havoc on my right-hand flank, so I'll take with what I can get. So with combat phase over, we go directly to the top of turn number 3 for the Goblins. Alright, that takes the top of turn number 3 after the move phase for the Goblins. As you can see in this photo, pretty much I did move a lot of my units around. The first thing I started doing was sending in charges. First unit I sent in was the Howlers, put in the back of Galroush, that way I can pin that guy in close combat, so that way if Undead Friend the Loon gets killed, at least he'll have to stay in position and won't be able to engage the rest of my army. At the same time, also send the Death Creepers in the back of Ingram Van Horseman as well, so that way I can keep him pinned as well. In the center portion of the board, I moved in my Looters as well as my Backstabbers, moved those guys a couple inches so that way my Fanatics, both those units get popped. I took 6 Fanatics and kind of charged them right through the center of that Gore unit that used to be in the middle of the table. Managed to chop those guys in half, so now those guys have broke their manic test and now they're fleeing off the table. So that was kind of like a good one for me. It kind of bought me some time on my right hand flank. At the same time, I also took my Hateful Eight as well as Ground the Paunch and turned to the left hand side because I know that Undead Fred is dead. There's no way he can survive against 2 Chaos Dragons. My plan here is to keep him kind of fixed with my 2 units of cavalry. Hopefully they might be able to survive around and last a little bit longer. That way I can charge in both Ground the Paunch as well as the Hateful Eight and to finish off those 2 units as well. And that pretty much makes the move phase for this one. During the magic phase, I managed to get off 2 spells to kind of help my combat for my cavalry against these 2 dragon models. First of all, I got Gift of the Spider God off onto my Spider Riders with Snag, Grop, Spit, as well as the Death Creepers. So now they cause wounds on rolls of 5s or 6s with their poison attacks, which I'm going to need because that guy is a Hortense build, so it's going to be very, very difficult to kill. At the same time, I also put off Sneaking Stabbings off onto my excuse me, my unit of Wolf Riders as well, the Howlers. So now those guys also get armor piercing, also get bonuses to wound because they're right behind Galroush, they're attacking from the back. So pretty successful magic phase. So the magic phase over, we go directly to the shooting phase. During the shooting phase, the rest of my Goblins are not engaged in close combat, as well as my Doomdiver Catapults just atomize what's left over the Zangors as well. Managed to wipe those guys off the table, so things are looking pretty good for my army. Now I can focus on attacking the left-hand flank of my army by taking on those Chaos Dragons, as well as taking on this unit of Chaos Warriors as well. In the combat phase, and went about as well as you probably could expect. It ended up being a really bad combat phase for me specifically. I failed to cause any wounds onto either Galroush or onto Ingrid Van Horseman at all. Ingrid Van Horseman's abilities were just rolling out of the box for that ward save. Impossible to kill that guy. In return, however, they managed to kill, I believe it was, I think it was 6. Yeah, he killed 8 of my Spider Riders between stomp attacks and breath weapons and also attacks from his Chaos Lord. Also managed to kill, I believe, 7. He managed to kill some of my Wolf Riders with his Galroush with his breath attacks, as well as his stomps, as well as normal attacks as well. Caused both my units to break and they fled for the hills because they're goblins and they're not really meant for going up against close combat against monsters. At the same time, my backstabbers, those guys got chopped down to the last man and got killed because they're fighting against Chaos Warriors, and that's what Chaos Warriors do. I had a break and flee with those guys. They pursued a couple inches and also ran them down as well. So things are looking very, very dangerous for my left-hand flank. However, combat between my Bone Breakers as well as the Shadow of Innistrad went very, very well. My opponent just flubbed his rolls for attack. I think I only got like 2 attacks or 3 attacks off with the Mutolith Vortex Beast. Was unable to win any of my guys. His Thunder Stops also didn't really do much of anything either. However, my Bone Breakers were able to put the last 3 wounds onto that guy and managed to eat him alive as well, which is also pretty awesome as well. I decided not to overrun off clearly because I had to start redirecting my armies to the left-hand flank to defend against those Chaos Dragons that are coming up. And that takes directly to the top of bottom turn number 3 for Legion of Chaos. This was taken after the move phase. As you can see, there not really much is left of the Legion of Chaos army because their points are heavily concentrated, but whatever that is left, my buddy Odeth decides to fully commit. First of all, he declares a charge. Eager Van Horseman makes no problem into Ground the Paunch. So now Ground the Paunch, as well as his general, my general, we'll have to fight out in close combats in a challenge, so that'll be kind of interesting to see how that goes. At the same time, he also charges Galroush into my Arachnarok Spider. That guy has 5 wounds carrying him already, so hopefully I'll be able to finish him off. But then again, Galroush could also just prove to be as dangerous in close combat as he is everywhere else, and maybe put the hurt on my Arachnarok Spider as well. So we'll see exactly what happens there in a little bit. At the same time, he also takes his Stormlords, kind of wheels him up 90 degrees where that forest is, and has him planning on charging into my Looters. I don't have any more fanatics anymore because I spent my fanatics taking off that gore unit, so whatever I have to do to kind of survive against that, I don't really have any plans or anything really lined up to defeat that, but we'll see what happens for that part as well. Alright, because there is no shooting or magic phase really, because everyone's engaged in close combat and magic was pretty much a wash, we go directly to the combat phase. And as you can see in this photo, right here is the reason why I love Ground the Punch. We got stuck into a duel, so we're starting to fight it out as well. Of my 5 attacks that Ground the Punch gets with his axe elf biter, he gets Killing Blow. And now, I know what you're thinking, oh, Mr. Well, you're thinking, Commander CheapSkate, this guy's riding a monster. Well, that is true, but Killing Blow, but him riding a monster doesn't actually immune him from Killing Blow. Now, if he was a monstrous beast, like he was riding like a demonic mount, that might be a little bit different, but because of that, he is subject to Killing Blow at the same time. Of my 5 attacks, 3 of them got off with 3 6s, and when it came to his ward saves to save himself against those Killing Blow attacks, he got a 5 and a 4, so he stopped 2 of them, but the very last one was a 2, and it's right that little magical sweet spot where he felt his ward save. He was unable to reroll it because it wasn't a 1, it's below a 3, so because I finally got a Killing Blow on that guy, and I managed to kill his general at the process of doing that, chopped off his general's head. We rolled off on the monster reaction table for his Chaos Dragon. That guy basically got stuck with stupidity, which also led to the combat between my Ragnarok Spider as well as to Galraush as well. I forgot to mention, my General Ground the Punch also managed to take 2 wounds from the combat that he fought against Igor Van Horseman on that part as well. So because of that, their general's now dead, and Galraush also died too. Basically, we were fighting it out. I managed to we had win at exactly the same time. I was able to inflict maximum damage with my Venom Surge attack of my Venom Surge. If you can believe all else, I managed to put Galraush down as well. So now the Chaos Dragon is dead, the Chaos Lord is dead. All I got left to worry about now is his Chaos Dragon that has his stupidity rules, as well as the unit of Storm Lords over there on the left-hand side as well. So things are looking pretty up for my army. And that, ladies and gentlemen, takes directly to the end of the game. My buddy takes a look around the table, realizes all he has really left is his unit of Chaos Warriors, which I'm about to shoot down to pieces here a little bit with my Doomdiver Catapults, as well as the rest of my Night Goblin armies, as well as my Manglers, as well as my Ragnarok Spider. So he just realizes he's going to call it quits at this point and just kind of surrender, because of the amount of points he's lost so far, he'll never be able to recoup them as well. So that part was kind of nice. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to After Action Report, because this battle report is now officially over.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
Alright, now it's time for the After Action Report. This is part of the battle report. We talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we do battle. This is the After Action Report for Warhammer the Golden Age Battle Report number 32. This ended up being a victory for yours truly. So let's talk about our losses real quick. For Odeth, my buddy lost Igor Van Horseman, Galraush, the Zangor, the Second Sons, as well as the Shadow over Innistrad. As for my losses, I lost, and these ones are kind of like taken out because they're fleeing. Snaggle, Grobspit, Gatilla the Hunter, the Howlers, the Death Creepers, Dos Sneaky Gits, and Undead Fred, and the Loon. In the end, let's talk about what kind of allowed me to win this. First of all, delaying action saved me this battle. By using my fanatics and using summoned up ghouls from the Lore of Undeath, I was able to slow down my army's advance. What that did is it bought me enough time to mount up a good defense and kind of pick and choose my engages, kind of tie things down as well. So once again, wonderful speed bump is that Lore of Undeath. I think I actually might just chuck my Night Lord, my Night Goblin Lord, War Boss, and replace with a Shaman that could use Lord of Undeath and make him a level 4, because he was very, very deadly, and it was very, very cool, like how I was kind of like delaying him with some of the fights that was taking place as well. And my fanatics were amazing in this battle report. They even did a lot of damage. Shooting was also pretty decent, but the real killers, like I said before, were my fanatics as well as Undead Fred. Destroying the Zangors as well as the Second Sons also saved me this battle, because I killed 2 of his main core fighting units, and that allowed me to concentrate on his 2 dragons that he had, so that was very, very important as well. For example, having Ground the Punch's Killing Blow go off on that Chaos Lord riding a dragon, that equals the win button for me. That once I did that, I pretty much sealed the deal for the battle report and just kind of allowed it to me to be ending in my favor as well. Odeth's, for my buddy Odeth, a lot of his army was too concentrated in terms of his points. He had some really big point value type of items, so every single time one of his units or one of his models was killed is basically a major loss for his overall army overall, and that's pretty much what it came down to for the most part. Once again, this was an awesome, great game. It was a fairly fun opponent to play against. I'm looking for the rematch. As always, guys, please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. Your guys' input is always appreciated. And also check us out on Facebook, on Instagram, and Google Plus for all the latest and greatest news for our channel. That's good to do for this one, you guys. That wraps up Battle Report number 32. We'll see you guys every Thursday again when we alternate between Warhammer the Golden Age which is our Warhammer 8th Edition Fantasy Battle Reports, as well as Necromunda, and also on Sundays we have Age of Sigmar, as well as the Ninth Age. You guys stay classy. We will catch you guys on the flip side.